Welcome to the Shade Chronicles, an anthology-style podcast featuring short works of fiction and serial prose, specifically with a sci-fi and horror flavor. Your hosts for the podcast are Derek Leffridge and Lawrence Trokey.
Hi, this is Derek Leffridge.
Hi, this is Lawrence Trokey, and thank you for spending your time with us.
Hello, this is Derek, and Lawrence is over there.
Hi there.
And we are going to do this podcast on basically the music, or I guess the audio and the music that we have on our podcast, which all of it is done by our friend Lawrence. And I think the thing is that we want to kind of express is that the music really helps with our stories in the sense of setting a tone and keeps the story going, if not keeping the attention of everyone into the story. I think we've done a really good job with that. Our Lawrence has done a really good job with that. Before we got on here, we were kind of discussing a little bit, and it's really something that we like in our movies that I think a lot of people do, keeping your interest and keeping the story going. And there are times where, unfortunately, that's done horribly, and it really takes you out of the movie or story. So I'll just pass it off to you, Lawrence. I just wanted to give an intro there about this and just go off on the music that we discussed.
Yeah, so just quick thought from me about why we do the music and that kind of thing. I mean, we could just read the story. Mm-hmm. You know, we don't have to have all the music and the sound effects. But I think for what we're trying to do here and in the genres that we're playing around with, sci-fi and horror, I think the music and the sounds and things really lend itself to that. I mean, if we were just doing like a detective story or something, I guess we could just read it and not have all the mood music and that kind of thing. But I think the music really helps with what we're doing, and God knows we need all the help we can get, right?
Yes, I want to say also that it kind of reminds me of growing up of radio theater when I was in the car with my grandparents and they're having a radio and they're telling stories. I don't think that you're not doing all of that. That would be maybe a little hokey nowadays, but I think the audio and the sounds and just kind of here and there, because I know we've discussed things in certain parts of stories I've done to kind of enhance things and bring it to the forefront because maybe the reading was not really there or something like that, and it really helped.
Yeah, sure. And, you know, when you listen, I mean, I know you listen to podcasts. I listen to podcasts from other people. Some of that is actual fiction that other people have made, whether it's original or they're redoing or bringing books and dramatizing them. So there's certainly the mix of folks who are just reading versus those folks who are reading with sound effects and music. And I enjoy both. So, and I have a lot of fun doing the music and the sound effects for our stories as well. So I think that's another reason, you know, we're doing all that is because Lawrence wants to. So, and
I've liked how it all has turned out. I mean, I've listened to them and given you some suggestions on some of the things I've written, and you've added different things to it, and it's been just, it really has. I was like, I didn't think that's a good one. That's a good idea. Well, good. It keeps it rolling. It keeps it going.
I'm glad you're enjoying it too. So we're going to start off here just listening to some clips of music from the various stories we've done over the past, well, it's almost been a year now, because we started last Halloween in 2023 with the first episode of the Shade Chronicles. So we'll listen to some music, whether it's for intros or mood music, and just talk a little bit about what was behind the creation of it, the ideas, and we'll just kind of go from there. So the first one that we're going to listen to is the one we just listened to for the beginning of the podcast. It's our intro that we're currently using. So we'll listen to that, and then we'll talk a little bit about that afterwards. Okay, so that was the music for the intro that we're using for season 2. And one of the things I wanted to mention about that was I thought initially I wanted to have a space in the beginning of the intro that would allow me to put sound effects in, which you actually hear the original intro, or the intro that you've been hearing all through season 2 is the werewolf growling and howling and spaceship and all that kind of stuff. I wanted to put sound effects in there and have a little bit of music underneath that to set the tone and the mood for what was happening and kind of building to something. And then you get to that police car sound effect, and it kicks off into this, real heavy sounding music, with the main voice in that music being this synthesizer that also sounds like a siren and is also indicating that something dangerous is about to happen, or you're in a situation of great danger or drama, that kind of thing. So that was the idea for putting that together.
Yeah, I like how it makes me feel like, when I'm listening to it, it makes me feel like something's about to happen and, gets my attention. And of course, when we're in the world of how we're listening to things and you have the stereo type of thing and things like that, it really does kind of pull you into the story, I feel, starting off slow, getting to the crescendo and everything like that. I think that's what I feel is just pulls me in. It's like, all right, it's about to start. Something's going to happen here, and, I'm ready for the story.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so the next one is actually the intro for the first season, which has a little bit different tone to it. Again, still trying to achieve some of the same goals that we did with this intro for the second season, but we'll listen to it and contrast the difference there.
Okay, so that's the intro I grew up with, meaning that it was the first season and didn't really know what kind of intro we were going to have. I knew that Lawrence was going to be putting something together. It does remind me, seems like it has a very heavy metal feel to it, or spirit to it. I do like it. It was good, first one, in the sense of bringing it into there, maybe in your face more than the previous one we talked about. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it just brings you in, and that's what I kind of knew that, okay, this is the beginning of the Shade Chronicles podcast. This is the one that, I listen to a lot and, like I said, grew up on.
Right. Well, when we decided to do the podcast and decided to go down that route of having dramatized with music and sound effects and that kind of thing, so now we have to have an intro. Mm-hmm. And because this is something that we're both really excited about, we care about,
right?
We want it to be good quality. We got to come up with something that measures up to that, mm-hmm. and hopefully it did. But one of the things that I was thinking of when I was putting that together was, okay, let's pump the excitement. So mm-hmm. having that bass drum, going and not really doing much else with the rest of the percussion was the thing, like a heartbeat thing, like, now the adrenaline's pumping and we got this thing up and running. Mm-hmm, and then the other thing I tried to simulate with electric guitars and cymbals is thunder and lightning feel. You've mm-hmm. got this melody that's running through the intro, which is kind of dark. And then you've got the occasional guitar chord that rings out, or the cymbal crash. So again, in my mind, thinking of thunder and lightning, and you're in some dark, scary place, and there's a storm coming, and everything's about ready to fall on you.
Yeah, I think it sets the tone for us, because I think well, we are big fans of horror, and I think that a lot of our stuff is embedded into that thinking, even though we do sci-fi, and mm-hmm. we'll throw the the yucks in there at times and things like
Right,
that of our
right.
characters or our stories. But I think the most of it is horror, and I think that kind of sets the tone for what's going to be coming, which is going to be something that's going to be at times dark, but if anything, interesting, curious about, and just sets the tone.
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned that about the focus on horror. I mean, growing up with you, I mean, how many horror movies did we watch? I mean, oh my gosh.
Yeah, on a summer weekend, we'd be hanging out Friday through Sunday, and we'd watch 3 a night.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Whether it's just us or with your uncle, or sometimes your uncle and your grandmother.
Yeah.
Which is kind of interesting. Watching somebody's face get ripped off and grandma's sitting right next to you. And don't correct me if I'm wrong, but I think she didn't mind. I think she enjoyed watching that
she
too.
Liked it. She liked it too. Yeah, she did. She did.
Which I didn't know any grandmas that would like stuff like that. So, I mean, it was really kind of neat.
It was a family gathering.
Exactly. So, yeah, the music definitely from those things, I think, has an influence here, and you probably hear a little bit of that as we go forward. Definitely the hairband metal 80s stuff, which is what I grew up with. So let's see here. The next one, we've got the outro music, which, we'll just play a piece of that. And again, we're still talking about the same type of thing, creating a sense of drama and excitement. You've just finished listening to an episode, but we want you hungry for more. So keep the energy going, keep things hopping. So here's that.
All right, so I like those. I like the outro. By the way, while I was listening to it, I was ready for your voice to come on and say something about the next episode. But I was like, oh, well, that's not what we're doing now.
Yep.
However, I do like it, again, as something that is just like part of the podcast that I know that it's kind of like the beginning part opens the door, and then that part shuts the door. That's it. It's all together, one bundle. It's finished till the next time. And I think that I feel a little bit, when I was listening to it again, I feel that it's got a Doctor Who kind of feel at the end of Doctor Who, where it's kind of like I'm just seeing space view and credits. This is it. This is what you listen to. We'll be back. I think it bookends really well.
Yeah. And it's amazing what you can do with 2 notes. Because that's essentially what the whole outro is just 2 notes, in a low octave, and then it goes up to a high octave. But the other thing that really I was excited about this, and I have to bring something into the conversation here that is a little bit technical that maybe not a lot of people know about, or maybe even more or less care about, but it is kind of important, and it's been probably 50 or 60% of the inspiration for a lot of the stuff that I create. So I use a Roland Juno keyboard. It's a 61-key keyboard synthesizer for a lot of the music in these episodes, and for the intros and the outros. And that sound in the outro there of the 2 notes going back and forth, the keyboard or the synth part that you hear there, when I was just playing around on the Juno and going through the different voices, I landed on that. I'm like, man, that sounds just like an outer space alien kind of sound, and just perfect for what we're doing. And I found a way to incorporate that into kind of a rock and roll metal sound backing track thing to go along with it. So the synthesizer, has been a godsend. Without it, I don't know where half of this stuff would be. We probably would just be reading, because I wouldn't have gotten all these ideas for music for the podcast without it. And it just has so many different voices and so many ways to play around with that stuff. It just seems perfect for anyone who's doing a sci-fi horror podcast,
Right.
So we were really lucky. And I've had this thing for probably 15 years. I bought it way back when, and I'm not a keyboard player, as you could probably tell if you actually listen to half the music. But, I'm able to figure out a couple of things on it. And again, the sounds that are in this thing are just phenomenal and allow me to create all these different mood music and things. So got to give a lot of credit to that keyboard for what we're doing with the music here. So anyway, moving on from that nerdy technical thing.
So I think we have our first possible person to sponsor us.
Yeah, right. I know the guys at Roland, and they're not on top of things that well to
okay.
be able to
Scratch
be paying
that
attention. Yeah. So no offense, Roland, but yeah, I've done some business with you guys, and I know what it's like. So anyway, the next thing. We're going to move into some music from some of the stories. The next one is the intro from a story called A Perfect Day. And again, a lot of metal, rock and roll kind of sounding, and also you'll hear some synthesizer stuff in there to kind of sweeten the deal. Or as somebody I saw on YouTube the other day was saying, just add in the salt and pepper, to the things. So
all those kids.
Yes. So here's that. Okay, so Perfect Day intro there. Again, had a lot of fun making that intro. Real grinding rock and roll sound there with the guitar, steady drum beat, that kind of thing. And then bringing in that synth that just has that little bit of sci-fi horror-ish kind of sound, and making it sound again like a siren. So you get that sense of danger and that something's going on. So that's kind of the inspiration there.
It was very much something that kind of, says things are about to happen. I like how all of a sudden that under, or whatever you call it, the bed of the music comes in after a little bit. That really gives it a lot of depth and makes me feel that, I'm all about, like I've said many times probably on this, is like I like getting put into the environment, and that's what I think that all the music seems to be doing for me. Good.
It's doing its job then. So the next one is one that is probably one of my favorites. And it's from one of the stories that you wrote. It is the Social Serial intro, and just a couple of things about that. I was playing a lot of, this again kind of gets a little musical nerdy, playing a lot of power chords, and my daughter, Rachel, actually suggested to me, he's like, well, you can start to do some riffing and, playing some solos and that kind of stuff. You don't all have to keep it all with this heavy power chord stuff. Well, I'm not much of a lead guitar guy, shredder, but I can put together a couple of little things, and then I came up with this riff, and as I'm playing through it, I'm thinking, man, this sounds like something from a Scooby-Doo episode, or and I don't mean to say that to poke fun of the story or anything like that. I mean, I actually think it was a compliment, because it's like, the Scooby-Doo is like the murder mystery, thing going on there. So it just sounded really cool, this little descending riff that occurs in it, and when put together with the rest of it, I just thought it was just a nice little piece of music, and I was glad it could go with your story, because I thought it really helped elevate the story too. I think it did a good job for that as well. But anyway, let's listen to that.
Okay, so I like that one. I really like the sound of that one. And I apologize. I don't remember all of them because we're behind the scenes doing these things, putting them together.
Yep.
We do listen to them. I do listen to them. I know Lawrence listens to them too. And then they go out to the world, and then we're all of a sudden starting on the next one. So you kind of get it's like you can't really enjoy it or look at it. But what I do see about this one, and I realize it's in quite a few of them, and no offense to your guitar playing or anything like that, but I like how it makes me think that it's playing on a warped record in an abandoned home that's probably got ghosts in it. It's just kind of had that kind of weird sound in it.
Yeah,
and I really like how that. I'm realizing this now that those things it's I don't know if it's the synth or whatever like that, but when you don't just do the synth and you do other things, it doesn't fight it, but it just kind of seems like it's a warped record. And it just sounds really cool. I kind of like that because there's been horror video games I've played or TV shows, and which we might get into later, but nothing's creepier than a damn record being played in a house, and it's kind of warpy.
Or like a piano that's out of tune, and somebody's playing
out of tune.
some weird...
That's what I should have said, not warped. I apologize.
No.
Yeah.
It makes sense, yeah. And, definitely, again, that descending scale thing with the effects on it and that stuff was intended to be creepy because the story is creepy, right?
Yep.
I mean, it's a serial killer, story, that kind of thing. So we're trying to match up the mood there. The one thing I didn't remember until I listened to it again was the drum work in there. It gave me an opportunity to do more than just play a straight drum beat, throw in some toms and that kind of thing. And again, I'm geeking out here a little bit on the music side of things, but it's fun. It's just fun. So the next part here, we've talked about how the keyboard kind of lends itself to helping us set these moods, tell these stories with this music that we can make with it. Here's a couple of examples of a little bit more heavy keyboard stuff that really demonstrate what I was talking about when I was saying that this is a good keyboard for this type of work.
So those are bringing back memories now. of episodes and then parts inside of episodes. And what we're talking about, wanted to talk about was Pathfinder, the episode that you did that you wrote and read. That was the music was interesting at first because it was kind of I think I was calling it whimsical, and just bringing in whatever like that. And I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna see how this goes. And then I'm like, well, of course, it fits the story completely because the story was, like you said, a character that was not really all there, be it alcohol or mentally. But as far as that goes, it did fit it really well. And I was thinking about that when we were going through these, that was one that was really a surprising one. And I was like, these are all connecting to the episodes.
Yeah, for sure. That one was one where I was really trying to think about how to create a mood that was sci-fi but also lighthearted, because I knew this character was a goofball.
Right.
So, and I wanted to throw something that felt humorous in there. So that seemed to work pretty well. And then the next one was from another sci-fi story, the Pirates of Luna from season 1, which felt was a little bit more adventure thing. So, the music lent itself to that. And then there's some other little keyboard examples we'll throw in there to just kind of show you how the keyboard was working for us and creating different types of music with some of the different sounds that it had. There's also a couple clips coming up here that are from stories that are also more in that lighthearted vein. Fantastic Francis.
Yeah, I was just going to say that
one of those.
Yeah.
I mean, even though it wasn't really meant to be humorous, I think the fact that he has bonds with mice,
right,
I think is kind of cool.
It warrants it, yeah.
Yeah, and I think we don't have to be real heavy and dark,
right,
for something like that, because the mice, end up being good guys,
right.
So, and then Instant Karma. Also from season 1, where, again, I was trying to be funny and humorous about this guy's situation, talking about how he was the luckiest guy on the planet until the universe figured out, oops, wait a minute, we got to get this guy messed up. He hasn't experienced the same experience that everyone else in the universe has, with ups and downs, that kind of thing. So at this point, I was going to talk about things that were outside of the podcast, but still related to what we're talking about here, and inspirations and that kind of thing. We talked about watching so many horror movies when we were growing up together.
Good and bad.
Good. Oh, lots of bad ones.
Yeah, lots of bad.
And not bad from the sense of, oh, this is scary, horrible.
Right.
Bad from, this is just terrible. This is written poorly.
Yes.
The effects are bad.
Yes.
The stories are stupid.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. But, I mean, we watched them, right?
Oh, yeah.
So,
yeah.
But one guy who was making movies that I think we both were on board for, saying, hey, this is good stuff, is John Carpenter.
Right.
And so tons of movies, Halloween obviously being, kind of his iconic claim to fame. But you also got Escape from New York, and you got The Thing, you've got, I think it's called Prince of Darkness. And I mean, just tons of different movies. They Live, with your
Roddy
wrestling.
Piper.
Yeah, you're into wrestling.
That was a good movie, actually.
Yeah, it was. And it wasn't, the things about his movies is that, a lot of horror movies are always like, oh, the bad guys always win.
Yeah.
They come back at the end and they kill you. But in his movies, the good guys win sometimes too, or they conquer the bad guys. And, like Big Trouble in Little China, is kind of one of those where I was disappointed. I mean, as a kid, I didn't get it.
Yeah.
I was disappointed in it because the good guy was an idiot. But as an adult, I can appreciate the humor in it and the irony of it. And in that one, even though it looks like the good guys win at the end, you see him, spoiler alert, by the way, you see the main character, Kurt Russell, driving away, and he's got some kind of monster on his semi, about ready to do something terrible, I'm sure. So, but the music in all of those movies, especially the John Carpenter movies, I mean, John Carpenter is an inspiration for what we're doing here. He also is a composer, and he scores all of his movies. He does all the music for his movies. So, if you think about his movies, the classic one, Halloween, being, probably his biggest claim to fame, but the theme to Halloween is very unique as well, and has a classic vibe to it now because it's associated with that movie, but it also, in and of itself, is a nice piece of music. Really sets the mood, sets the tone for what you're about to watch. Other movies, Escape from New York, that's another one that sticks in my brain as having that classic heavy synthesizer sound too, which is, something that you hear in the work that we've done for this podcast as well. But so John Carpenter, not only from the story standpoint and making these movies and stories that we really like, but also making music that is memorable and lends to the story making process, I think is one of the reasons why I wanted to do something like this and try to just come up with some really cool music to help out the storytelling for us.
Yeah, it helps with threading the story and kind of keeping with it and things like that. I think it's helpful in that sense.
Yeah. And so, if we think back to, like I said, we watch tons of movies and different music that was featured in some of the big ones. I mean, I can think of being so excited about hearing the Star Wars theme.
Oh, yeah.
And even going out and buying the Star Wars theme, and back then it was on an album or a 45, and listening to that like I would listen to any other music on the radio or that kind of thing and enjoying it just as much. And technically, it's classical music that I'm listening to, I mean, Star Wars is pure symphonic music. And for me, as a kid who was into rock and roll, and the thought of listening to classical music just made me want to go to sleep. But Star Wars was that. But I didn't see that because of it being attached to that movie.
Yeah, it worked with the movie.
What it did for the movie, for sure. And another one that I'll throw out there that you'll probably remember. You remember the original Battlestar Galactica theme?
Right, yeah.
Yeah. Again, symphonic music, but tied with a story and a type of story that, we were really excited about and got into, and it just really helped set the whole tone for what you're going to see, this big, grand space drama. So we could go on and on about different movies and the music that are part of them and how they have lent themselves to it bettering the movie, bettering the overall experience. But we've probably bored the folks long enough.
And I think, too, real quick, I think that some of the stuff that you're doing with the intros and things like that with the podcast kind of is like a TV show's theme song. Yeah. Where kind of like, this is my show, it's coming on, and I'm it gets me excited, I'm getting ready for it. So it's nice to be able to have those kind of things in there.
Well, definitely we're products of that whole thing where, you would wait all week to watch your favorite TV show and be excited about it. And as the theme song's coming on, you're getting revved up, ready to watch your favorite characters doing their thing this week. So, I mean, it just goes into the creative process of what we're trying to do here.
Right.
So anyway, that will probably wrap us up here with this episode. Again, we're just throwing these out there for fun. We'll get back to storytelling sometime in September.
Yes.
Got some good stories planned for y'all, and looking forward to sharing those with you, and some music to go along with it as well. So for the Shade Chronicles, I'm Lawrence Trokey.
I'm Derek Leftridge.
And we appreciate you listening, and we'll see you next time.
Goodbye.
Thanks again for listening to the Shade Chronicles. For comments or inquiries, you can contact us at shadechron@gmail.com. That's SHADECHRON@gmail.com. Visit us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can also get more information at theshadechronicles.com. The Shade Chronicles Podcast is the creative property of Derek Leftridge and Lawrence Trokey. Stories in this podcast were the sole creation of Derek Leftridge and Lawrence Trokey, respectively. Any attempt to replay for broadcast or distribution portions of any episode of the Shade Chronicles without the prior written consent from the creators and/or significant compensation is strictly prohibited. Shame on you for even thinking about it in the first place. Thanks again for listening, Tune in next time for another episode of the Shade Chronicles.